All right, Steeler fans, welcome back. It is the second half. For those that are watching on YouTube, I put this segment out on our YouTube channel. If you want to know how you get your question answered, it's easy. You see it on the screen. For those listening in audio, you find me on Twitter at jhartman, HARTMAN_PIT. Every Tuesday, I put out the tweet. All you have to do is respond to the tweet, and I will answer the question live here on the show. Wednesday, the mailbag segment, very popular segment, and you all had a ton of questions. I do want to draw your attention, though, before I forget. I hope you all actually listened to the special edition podcast, special episode is what we called it. Myself, Brian Davis, audio only feed. We talked about how the competition to quarterback that I had mentioned on Monday, that's real. That's real from our source. Let's get to these questions. All right, Believers, he said the Ride or Die Crew poll of the week with all the drama. The draft still falls where we need offensive. We need center, tackle, wide receiver, and cornerback. Which do you take in the first? So for me, I think it's got to be offensive line, and I went with offensive tackle in the first. I think there's fewer of those than centers. I chose center would be my second round pick, maybe even wide receiver there. We'll see. Center's got to be up there, though, now they haven't made a move in free agency. That's a tough question, by the way. All right, let's go to Joshua Petrick. He said, if we were to re-sign Patrick Peterson on a cheaper deal, would you imagine that it would be during the post-draft free agency wave? I don't think it's going to be anytime soon. I believe personally that if the Steelers bring in Patrick Peterson, it will have to be after the draft where they don't find any other help in some way, shape, or form, whether it's slot cornerback, outside cornerback, box safety, whatever. And they kind of got box safety already with Deshaun Elliott. So I don't think they're going to be calling him up anytime soon. They could. We'll see. Jeff Coons, our buddy up north, spells his name incorrectly. He said, Jeff, your quote-unquote source inside the building has proven quite reliable. Yes, he has. Thank you. He said, thanks for informing your audience. How does the relationship work? Do you call them for updates or do they dial you when something's cooking? He said the grill reference was brought to you by Oklahoma Joe's. Thank you very much, Jeff. So it can be both ways. There's been times where I have contacted our source and said, hey, hearing this, what are we hearing inside the building? He gets back to me. There's times when I get the phone call or I get the text message and he says, hey, this is happening. So to give you an example, when Deontay Johnson was rumored that he was going to be shopped, I said, hey, it's smoke. Where there's smoke, there's fire. What are you hearing? That's when we did our breaking news podcast that Deontay Johnson is on the open market. And it was only a few days after that he was traded. So that's kind of how it works. Yeah, it can be both ways. Mark Bergen of the Believe in Steelers podcast, he chimes in and said, which wide receiver do you think the Steelers will select in the 2024 NFL draft? Well, of course, the name that comes to my mind is one that was on Mel Kiper's mind when he did his mock draft, his second edition, if you want to call it that, mock draft. And he chose Brian Thomas Jr. out of LSU. I did some research on the guy. Really, really impressive individual. Do I think that the Steelers should go wide receiver in round one? I don't, but I would love to have that guy on the team. He's been comped to George Pickens. That would be quite the duo, wouldn't it? So I like that guy just because of recency bias. All right, let's go to Steelers Tank. He said, well, Jeff, I would just like to say it's a great time to be a Steeler fan. Who is this team? I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, we said this in multiple breaking news podcasts over the last week, and that is this is not the same old Steelers for sure. Tank continues. The wide receiver room is Pickens, Austin III, and Van Jefferson. Is it safe to say that rounds 3 and 5 will be wideouts? I'm hoping 1,000 pounds first 3 rounds, center, tackle. So he wants offensive line first 3 rounds, and I'm all for offensive line being addressed first. The issue I had with Mel Kiper's mock that I just mentioned is the fact that there were no pure centers. There was an interior offensive lineman taken before 20. No pure centers were off the board. Darius Mims was still on the board, and he had them go wide receiver. I was like, I don't like this. And then Mims ends up going to Baltimore. That makes me want to puke. So still, I don't agree with that mock. I think they go offensive line for sure. Next from Tank. Fields were number 1 in Chicago. Pittsburgh doesn't allow number 1 as of right now. Would Dobbs, would a number 5 look better or Claypool 11? I think give him I'd rather see 5 than 11, but I don't know. We'll see. I don't know what the number one thing is. Gary Anderson did wear that for a very long time, and it wasn't an issue then. I'm not sure why it's an issue now. Tank also says, with it being Mailbag Wednesday, are we done talking about Kenny Pickett? Or are we going to ride that train until the draft? I'm done. This is the last time. Unless it gets somehow brought up where I need to talk about it, I'm done with it. He's not on the team anymore, so I'm moving on. Let's go to the next one from Tank. So time for a real thinker here. Danger Russ. It's Russell Wilson. He's welcoming everyone with open arms to the Steelers. Do you think he will have a heel turn if Fields grabs the QB1 at any point in the season? I don't think so, unless it's a dicey situation. I think that he's going to be a supportive teammate. Why? He realizes that he wants to keep playing, and even if it's not with Pittsburgh, he needs to make sure that his next employer, whoever that may be, has a positive image of him, and that image matters to Russell Wilson. Last question from Tank. He said, with how good Pickens was or has been, has he washed the stench of Limas Swede's 14 off of that number, or does he need 1,300 yards and like 9 to 10 touchdowns first? I don't see 14 and think Limas Swede anymore. If anything, sometimes I think Sammy Coates because he wore 14. So for me, the number is just the number. I understand what you're saying, but that's just a number. Blue Steel asks if Omar Khan leaves Pittsburgh on Friday, heading west, traveling at 75 miles per hour, and the Chicago Bears front office opens at 9 a.m. on Saturday, how much fleecing of the Bears will Khan have committed by 4 p.m.? Too much is the answer for the Chicago fans. They were pissed. Man, they were so mad after that trade. I would be too. I talked about it on the NFL Whip Around with Coach KT Smith. I called it organizational malpractice. How do you do? I don't know. I'm not getting down that track. Let's go, Chris G. He said, hey, Jeff, hope all is well with the roster as it stands. Who would your first pick be if these players were all on the board? Quinyon Mitchell, cornerback, Amarius Mims, tackle, Jackson Powers Johnson, center, Brian Thomas Jr., wide receiver. Keep up the great work. Thank you, Chris. So those 4 players, I'm going to go Mims. I'm going to go Amarius Mims, tackle. I'm going to address center in round 2, and then I'm going to turn to the outside wide receiver / cornerbacks in the following rounds. Not what a lot of people would like, but I think it's what they need. Let's go to RJ McCollum, but Justin Fields being signed now. Who are you giving the 5th-year option to, Najee or Fields? So this is a tough one because it depends on how the Steelers are planning on playing this quarterback situation out. I could see them signing the 5th-year option for Najee Harris. Some people think it's a foregone conclusion they won't. I'm not hearing that. But Najee Harris could have his 5th-year option picked up. They could decline Justin Fields' 5th-year option. They could pick up both. Most teams are not going to do that because that's a very large amount of money in 1 year. But the difference is positionally, Najee Harris's 5th-year option is not going to be nearly as expensive as a quarterback's 5th-year option. So if Justin Fields is viewed as a long-term answer, then maybe they try to get a new contract done before the season. I don't know. I have no idea. If they get the 5th-year option, they did this with Joe Burrow in Cincinnati. They could always try to renegotiate and extend the contract to move the money around so you're not stuck with one lump sum of that 5th-year option. So they do have options. Omar Khan knows what he's doing. But RJ also gave a dad joke, which I love. What do you call a lineman's kid? A chip off the old blocker. Very good, RJ. Thank you very much. Let's go to Mike Smith. He asked several questions. The first, do you think the Steelers will fill out the rest of their offseason quarterback room via free agency or the incoming draft class? I could see them signing one from each. I agree. I could see one from each, but if they get a free agent, don't expect it to be a known quarterback commodity. It's probably going to be either an undrafted guy or a very, very late round pick. Second question, can you remember an offseason with this much intrigue around the Steelers? Maybe the fall of the Killer Bees? And I'm trying to think. The fall of the Killer Bees was it was a slow and painful death. Le'Veon Bell and then Antonio Brown goes into psychosis, and then Ben Roethlisberger tears up his elbow. Now, this has been a hell of an offseason, and it's still really young. Last one from Mike Smith. I found the list of players that Wilson met with before signing a bit odd. James Harrison's known for welcoming quarterbacks to the turf, not necessarily to town. Is the heavy defensive presence indicative of a lack of leadership on the offensive side of the ball? There is clearly a lack of leadership on the offensive side of the ball. Who's the leader? They tried Najee Harris. That really didn't stick. Tried Mitch Trubisky? No. Tried Kenny Pickett? No. that someone's got to step up and be the leader. So yeah, I think you're right. The defense is the leaders on this football team. David Briggs, sit on the scale of 1 to Lloyd Christmas. What are the chances we get one of the following? Justin Jefferson, Brandon Ayuk, Stephon Diggs. And then he says, question number 2, who do you think would win in a vice president debate between Mr. CTE, because he's referring to Antonio Brown, or Aaron Ayahuasca Rodgers? Aaron Rodgers would win that debate, by the way. Antonio Brown is a unique character. On a scale from 1 to Lloyd Christmas, Justin Jefferson, 1 in a million. You're saying there's a chance. Brandon Ayuk, maybe we'll say, I don't know, 70. I'm not hearing anything. It's like, I don't think this is a high percentage. Stephon Diggs, maybe. I don't want him. He's a headache. I feel like that dude is a headache. Let's go to Lumber Zach 94. Jeff, by the time you've read this news you've predicted should have already happened. I'm hoping for a wide receiver, but could see something else happening too. My question is, after this predicted move, do you see the team going after anyone else? So we all assume they're going to get a wide receiver. I think they're still going to look at corner. I think they're still going to look along the defensive line, offensive line. Those are going to be the main targets there. Maybe even safety, depending on what they want to do with DeMonte KZ. Eric asked, both Fields and Russ are the quarterback room. Who do you believe will still be here in 2 years, Russ or Justin? I'm hoping Justin. He's a younger guy. You want the younger guy to win it and be that guy for a long time. Doesn't mean it's going to happen that way. Will Caldwell asked, the quarterback moves are so interesting, not just because the moves themselves, but the motivation behind them. It really contrasts between the two Steelers GMs. If nothing else, this has been the most exciting offseason that I can remember. I have renewal faith in our GM. Your thoughts? It's been interesting. I would say it's been a breath of fresh air. To have the Steelers not just do the same old thing, and I'm not just talking about free agent signings and trades. They're not doing the same old thing when it comes to the coaching staff. They're bringing in new coaches, bringing in more coaches. They're going to have to pay those. That's different from what we're used to. I like it. They're also making the moves that a lot of people have been wanting to see them make. I like it. It's a breath of fresh air. That's my thought. Let's go to Corey. He says, with an athlete like Fields on the roster, is it okay to have an iota of hope for the future? It is okay to have hope for the future. But at the same time, we do have to temper those expectations. We need to see it on the field first. Steelers fan 69. He always chimes in with dad jokes. Here we go. He said, great job over the weekend with all the updates. I do have a question. Will the Steelers use Fields in a Cordell Stewart slash role? I'm not so sure to be a Cordell Stewart slash role, but they should have a role for this guy. Coach KT Smith did a full breakdown on that on the YouTube channel. Go check it out. Phenomenal work, and they should use him. But here we go. My wife gets upset over my football addiction. We have been together for 39 seasons. Love that. Told my wife about that. She laughed. Then I told her the second one. She rolled her eyes, which means it's a good one. 2 artists had a fight. It ended in a draw. I love it. Let's go with Gene. He says, hello, with such a glaring need at center and no notable free agent, is this the first time the Steelers go into a draft with such a prime target in the first 2 rounds? It's been a while. I mean, you go back to when Kendrick Green was drafted, it was a similar situation. They needed a center. Everyone knew they needed a center. It was just, when are they going to take a center? And, well, we ended up with Kendrick Green. Not the best track record. Let's go to Eric. He says, do you think they have long-term plans for Russell Wilson? If so, what is the plan long-term? What is the plan for Fields? Also, will they let Russ play this year out before an extension? I think it's a mistake not to. I think the Steelers are heading into this upcoming season with let's see how it plays out. I do think it's going to be a competition. And if one of these players plays extremely well, they're going to try and reward them with a new contract of some sort. If it's Justin Fields that plays well, you might see a longer-term contract than if it was Russell Wilson, just because of the age of the players. I don't believe the reports are trying to lock up Russ for long-term now. I'm not buying that unless something changes. It's not what I'm hearing. Let's go to Will Caldwell again. Do you think the player reaction, Minka, TJ, Patrick Queen, etc., to Russ's decision to sign with the Steelers is exemplary of a leadership void on the offense since Ben Roethlisberger's retired. Like I said, this offense has no leadership. It is a rudderless ship. Who's the leader on offense? I'll wait. I'm thinking about it. I'm coming up with no one. So that's a problem. So yeah, maybe it is a void on the roster. Let's go with Quinn. He said, is it true you can't triple stamp a double stamp? And the reason why he's saying that, I put the GIF, I use a funny GIF of one of my favorite movies every week. This time I chose Dumb and Dumber when they're singing Mockingbird in the van with the guy in between them. Gosh, that movie is great. All right, let's go to the Dwayne train. He said, hey, Jeff, it's been reported that Russ and the Steelers will look for an extension after the season, which is obviously way too far away to tell. However, that makes me wonder about Fields' future. Do the Steelers envision Fields as a QB1 in a year or two? They are giving him every opportunity, or they're going to give him every opportunity to prove if he can be that in the future. And I think that speaks volumes. I'm not buying into the whole Russell Wilson's going to get this big time contract just because he's here. I'm not buying that at all. Let's go to Tom East. Jeff, I think the most annoying sound is anything Steven Smith says. That being said, your thoughts on Tyler Boyd, ride or die crew for life. Thank you very much, Tom. I like Tyler Boyd. I just don't know what the hang-up is with this contract for him signing anywhere. Mike Williams, he goes and visits the Jets. Lee doesn't even leave. He doesn't even get to Pittsburgh. He's supposed to meet with the Steelers